Gambit Chads, how do you do it? You guys have been continuously racking up wins with this same opening, with this same attack, with this same trick over and over and over again. Welcome back to Weekly Gambit Genius, where I review your best games with my opening repertoire, with my brand new Gambit Repertoire, which you can find linked below my link tree here. You guys can, these are all gambits that you guys can learn how to play, and you can form a full repertoire with them. You guys submit your games with this Google form, and you guys discuss them in the Discord and everything, and vote on each other's games. And I review the best ones, and this weekly Gambit Genius is special because there were so many games with this same attack that just continuously crushes your opponents. I'm going to review what Black's best defense is against it, and like the obvious question of what if they don't castle into it, but everybody seems to keep doing it. I couldn't have even predicted that this line would be as effective as it has been, but let's get to it. What is this attack? It comes out of both the Von Hennig and the Von Popiel gambits. Here's a game submitted by Michelle, 182, D4.
William Grave, the Gambit man, takes his seat at the board. E4, E5, Knight F3, Bishop C5. The Bushgas Gambit on the board. On with the Gambit classes. Hero pawn unlocked.
C6, so we have a transposition to the Caro-Kann, and we have our Von Popiel gambit on the board. Bishop to C4 instead of the obvious recapture of the pawn, taking advantage of this diagonal right away. Opponent defends the pawn, we play F3, takes, and you guys will find in the Von Hennig gambit what happens when they try to bring out the bishop to F5 or G4. In those videos on my channel, bishop to G4 is actually coming later. I'll talk about this position later in the video when it comes in that next game. But for the moment, let's talk about E6, which closes off this light square bishop. What does that allow us to do? You'll see. Castles, bishop E7. Queen slides over to E1. What's she doing there? Black castles. Now the bishop drops back to D3. What's going on? Not looking here anymore. There's nothing there. Knight develops. Black unaware of anything going on. Black's a strong player here, over 2,000. Now after queen h4, Black sees the issue. What is going on in this position? So basically, we are having a ton of pressure on h7. And that freezes this knight altogether. So there's no discovered attacks. Any knight move, this is checkmate. With the knight so stuck, we can put a ton of pressure on it. So like, let's say Black continues to proceed with trying to get out that last piece. We can play knight e5. And then all of a sudden, knight takes. Remember, the knight can't move. Queen takes. Boom. Knight's gone. King's gone. And if Black plays h6, well, you'll see what happens in some other games. But we have another bishop on another diagonal that is ready to capture right there on h6. Let me see if I can just turn off these little arrows. They're kind of annoying. Whatever. I'm going to turn off the feedback thing. There we go. So Black here feels they need to cut this diagonal completely, this whole hit on h7, because this knight's about to get very overwhelmed. Knight e5, bishop to g5. Can't play h6 because of this devastating sacrifice that we'll see in some other games. So how do you deal with h7? Well, in this game, Black played this move, pawn to g6, to try to cut the bishop here. Only pawn to g6 now leaves all these light square pawns, only one dark square bishop to cover all the holes. Now the white's dark square bishop activates and immediately pins this knight again. The knight can't really find moves because any knight move will lose this bishop due to the pressure right there. And knight to d5 will similarly lose it. Knight takes d5, bishop's hanging, takes, knight takes, threatens checkmate, so you can't grab the knight back, and so Black will lose a piece. We'll actually see this in a game. So Black here plays rook to e8 to try to free this knight. Only with every move, every defense, g6, rook e8, yes, they solve one problem, but it gives another problem onto the board. Basically, the issue Black's having is their light square bishop is so bad, like they have nothing going on here on the queen side, whereas White's light square bishop totally dominates this diagonal, cause g6, cause rook to e8. Here comes even more pressure by White. Knight to e5. Now, White's rook is looking at f6, it's looking at f7. What do? You take it, pawn takes. At least this knight can move now without losing the e7 bishop. So knight to h5. Black is trying to survive here. Knight to d5 probably wouldn't have changed much, and knight to h5 was an interesting idea to try and take away some other resources white has. Now, if black's able to achieve, it looks like black's going to achieve a lot here. If they're able to achieve this trade, right, and it looks like that's going to happen, queen takes e7, now maybe it looks like maybe they can defend. I mean, the light square bishop is still awful, of course, but they're hanging on here. Of course, a trade of queens would be the exact opposite of what we want when we're attacking. We're down a pawn, and now it's very, very hard to attack your opponent's king without queens on the board. So you must keep queens on the board if you're attacking, and also you don't want to be down a pawn in the endgame. Here, a very, very nice move by Michelle 182, knight to e4. I like it a lot. We're looking at this weak f6 square. So now the knight jumps into e4. It's behind its own pawn. It's looking at some nice dark squares. The dark squares are very, very vulnerable in black's position due to all the pawns being on light squares. So knight jumps into e4. Black plays bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, and h6, which makes a lot of sense. Now black's trying to force this queen trade to happen. So he's expecting probably knight to f3, where they can get the queens off the board. Very, very smart defensive resource, but an even smarter offensive resource. Don't trade the queens here. Anything you can do to keep them on the board will be good with your opponent's king this exposed. Queen to f2. Very nice move. Dodging the queen trade. If queen takes g5, then queen takes f7 check, and we'll take this rook, and then take their king. So not playable because, again, the bishop's not developed. If it were developed, then the rooks would be coordinated, and black would maybe have some more defensive resources. Instead, they will lose the game. Pawn takes g5 is also going to lose. After takes g6, threatening checkmate, and if it defends, maybe you take the knight at minimum, or also rook f7 wins. So that's not playable for black. They need to deal with, all of a sudden, 3 guys hitting f7. How do you defend 3 guys hitting f7? You can defend it one more time, but white can still take. So black comes up with this nice resource, f5. So f5 looks like a really clever move, because now, okay, you have to deal with the knight. It's hanging twice. And after the knight moves, now you've dealt with this weakness on f7 forever. The pawn's on f5, and so now it's not backwards. It's not tied down by this pawn. It's defended by fellow pawns. It's very solid there, right? Whereas on f7, it could be attacked more, and it's stuck backwards. So f5 was a chance to try to sneak that past this en passant while this knight is still hanging. Only unfortunately for black, a great move by our Gambit Chad, en passant anyway. Boom. 2 exclams according to chess.com. If here pawn takes g5, oh, that did happen in the game, so I'll talk about that in a moment. What can black do in this position? If they play here knight takes f6, as they probably should, I believe, yeah, you can just even drop this knight right back to e4, overwhelming this poor knight, right? Rook f8, you cannot defend it enough times. There's too much firepower down this file. Knight takes e4, we can drop in for a check, and we can take everything. This knight is pinned because of all of the mate threats on h7. This is just an impossible position to defend here. Takes h6, we can just take everybody. For example, here, rook f7. Very nice move. With the knight overwhelmed, can't take it because of the checkmate. Otherwise, we're just going to drop right into h7 or any of the other checkmating squares. So here, just a lot of resources when we've tore open the black king, and these pieces have just not been able to join the fight for black. Similarly, queen takes f6 makes a lot of sense. You're trying to trade things off here if you're black. You're trying to get the queens off. Black is indeed able to get the queens off, but on very unfavorable circumstances. So here, knight f7 is actually a very, very tricky move. So the point is that if king takes f7, we can actually just slide this queen out of the way and now win the queen because we've pinned it to the king and the queen here. So, and if queen takes f7, is of course remains impossible. Black can trade queens. However, this knight is now going to do way too much damage. It's hitting h6 and g6 is under attack. Black can try to defend, but then this knight just continues to hop around. Black continues to be without several pieces in the game, and just so much is hanging in their position. Everything is going to collapse because they just can't get them in the game. So even with getting the queens on the board, their position stay off the board. Their position would stay very, very poor. In the game, after queen to f2 en passant, black played pawn takes g5, which just accelerated their demise. Here, f7 fork, very nice. That is the point of this, and we can take on e8. And I really, really like this technical stage here, even after being up in exchange. What do we do here? We bring all of our pieces into the game, so everything's defended. F6 is defended. You know, we don't just have an immediate knockout blow, but we continue to bring all of our pieces into the game. Black tries to do the same. Finally moves this bishop, queen to d4 check, and now this nice move g4 to try and land this rook right on h3, to make that knight move, because we have control over the square, so a rook on h3 could just be checkmate. So even though the knight hops into f4, which is a very, very nice square, and this looks like a terrible trade-off, we've exposed our king, black can't really do anything to our king, so we play here rook to e3, threatening the elimination of this knight, and then rook to h3 once the knight no longer exists to take away rook h3, which could be checkmate. Black desperately tries to trade the queens, but we have rook takes f4 anyway. It defends the queen here, so here we would just win another knight and now be up a rook. And in the game, they play pawn takes f4, just rook to h3 check, and black resigns. Here we are winning the queen at minimum. If the queen weren't there, then queen to e5. I mean, the queen is there, but then queen to e5 would be checkmate. So a really, really nice game here that I think demonstrates the some of the nice attacking principles. Out of the Caro-Kann, we shift the queen. We had our von Hennig Gambit, our favorite. Black blocks off the bishop, and so what can we do? We can take that diagonal for ourselves and use the fact that we have both of these diagonals to force g6 due to the overwhelming pressure on h7. Everybody jumps in the game, and the attack really flows very, very nicely from there. Nicely done. This game, next game, submitted by Ponzi. This is going to be the same opening. This is going to be, we're going to get the exact same position, but out of a completely different opening. So shout out to Blunder Villager submitting it here. Von Papil, Perfect Game 97.8. Okay, 2-1G spoilers, submitting it in the Discord, in the Share Games channel where lots of people share their games. Let's get right to it. D4, D5, we have a Von Papil Gambit on the board with bishop to g5. Why do we love bishop to g5 more than the Black Mardimer? When we play the Black Mardimer immediately, it allows black this really nice resource, bishop to f5. And when black's able to play bishop to f5, largely they can just play e6, bishop e7 castles, and the bishop on f5 shields them from that very strong attack that we talked about in the other line. We don't want to allow them to get their bishop to f5 before playing this move, pawn to e6. So the reason we play here bishop to g5 first, we're putting a lot of pressure here. Now if black plays bishop to f5, it's still the most common move because it fortifies their pawn on e4. But now if black plays bishop to f5, when we play f3 takes, we're not playing knight takes f3. We have a very special resource here. It's queen takes f3. Queen takes f3, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn, and there's a lot of fun stuff that you guys can check out in the original Von Papil Gambit video. So instead, in this position, black often finds themselves playing this nice move, knight to b to d7. Knight b to d7 makes a lot of sense. It fortifies the knight, which in turn fortifies this pawn. However, it has a fatal downside. It's going to block this light square bishop from fighting for control over this very, very important diagonal. There is no way your opponent is going to be able to see the fact that bishop to d3, queen to e1, queen to h4 is coming from a million miles away. And that's why I guess this keeps happening. So here, f3 takes, knight takes f3, and you're going to see the exact same attack, and in fact, the exact same position. Castle short, queen e1, queen h4. Look at that. We have the bishop on g5, or it's almost the exact same position. Even though the other one started with the Caro-Kann, and this one started with queen's pawn. This is why this attack keeps coming, because it comes out of the Von Papil and it comes out of the Von Hennig. In fact, here, white is up a tempo. In the Von Hennig, they had to play bishop to c4 and drop it back to d3. Here, white is up a tempo and has used that extra tempo to play this nice move, bishop to g5, useful in all cases. Now, overwhelming pressure. Black is realizing all of a sudden queen e1, queen to h4, huge issues on h7. If black continues just doing something, then knight to e5, and that knight to f6 is getting completely overwhelmed. It's going to be taken, it's going to be taken, it's going to be taken, and there's going to be checkmate on h7 here. g6 is looking especially unappealing with this pin right down your throat. Knight to e5, already threatening to win material in a position like this. For example, c5 takes d7, knight cannot recapture because of taking on, because we can take this bishop. And if bishop takes d7, we can just take this knight, even the fancy way. So, overwhelming pressure in a position like this. g6 probably still should be played anyway. Knight to f8 can sometimes be a nice defensive resource, because that knight can defend h7, and it's hard to eliminate. But not that, you know, we still can't overwhelm with so many resources, bringing our rooks in. We'll see more games like that soon. So here, queen to h4, pressure on h7. Here, black plays h6. In the other game, we saw g6. What's wrong with h6? It's bishop takes h6. Big problem. Any knight move could attack the queen and not get mated in one. That's true, but we can just drop this bishop right back to g5. It's defended enough times, and now there's no h-pawn that even stands in the way of our checkmate. So, not a fun situation. Do we have even better here? I was thinking, yeah, bishop g5 is the best move. Okay, so bishop takes h6. In the game, black plays pawn takes h6, queen takes h6. And why does this work every time? Again, the knight is frozen. If the knight could move, then maybe, they can get some resources through. Again, the knight is frozen. That's checkmate. No knight move is ever possible. How can they get resources over before, say, the rook just waltzes into g3? Well, they're really the only way they can do that because their position's just so bunched up. Like, their defenses never seem to work. Rook to e8. That's an idea. Trying to play bishop to f8, bishop to g7. What do? We just play knight to g5. The game is over. Knight to g5. There is checkmate coming here. Bishop to f8 did not stop it. Knight to f8 would have stopped it. It really doesn't do much. So, okay, first let me show bishop to f8. We just play bishop to h7 check. And if they take it, we play queen takes. And if they play king to h8, we have knight takes f7 checkmate, which is how this game ended in 15 moves checkmate. It's very funny. Knight to f8, so it covers h7, right? So we can't just play rook takes f6 and checkmate. Well, okay, we can't because of this resource queen takes d4 and queen takes f6, which now will cover the f7 square in this position. Or knight takes h7 here, and now the queen can hang on for a moment. All we need to do in a position like this, and it's just gorgeous. We haven't used this knight in a minute, but just knight to e2. Just knight to e2, and black has absolutely no resources against the incoming rook takes f6. There's just absolutely nothing they can do to add to their defense. So, like, for example, like they play d6 to try to develop this. I don't know. All we need to do is play rook takes f6, and now we're going to checkmate them on h7, just like how we just saw bishop to h7, and knight takes f7 mate, or knight takes and checkmate right there. So really, really nice stuff. They can try to add a defender to f7 late in that line, but also swing the rook over works. It's just crazy that black just has absolutely no resources, just no way to get the pieces over to defend in this position. This diagonal is just so strong in conjunction with the queen, in conjunction with the file, in conjunction with this diagonal. Let's see even more examples of that. So, great stuff from Blunder Villager and from Michelle182. Let's go here to Mora Horror, Gambit Genius entry. Oh, let's switch the scene. Don't forget that. There we go. Weekly game. Good. Okay, so this is an over-the-board game. In fact, it was written, my round 3 game from the over-the-board rapid play, British Championship 2023. Did well. Beat an FM in round 9 with the Nackmanson Gambit. Awesome. 35th out of 118. Great job to our man, Mora Horror. So, d4 c6. Unfortunately, it was not a Smith-Mora, but it did transpose to a Von Hennig Gambit. Takes bishop c4. So this is an over-the-board rapid game, right? So this is more opportunities for your opponent to find better defenses. They have more time on their clock. So we have a Von Hennig Gambit, bishop to c4, taking advantage of this diagonal as soon as this comes, as soon as that diagonal opens up. Knight to f6 to protect the pawn. f3 takes e6. Okay, well, we'll talk about bishop moves later in the video. e6 castles, bishop comes out, queen to e1. We've seen this all before. Black here plays queen to e7, and I'll also talk about one of black's better defenses, which is not castling in this line. Here, black will castle. We see here bishop to g5 with the pin, h6, queen to h4. That's a nice resource that we utilize in a few of our gambit ideas. Lots of pressure here works very well with lots of pressure here. That's a pin on this pawn. They cannot take it. They will lose their rook. So black, to get out of this pin, makes the very unfortunate choice to castle. You'll note that the engine here was recommending rook to g8. You just cannot castle into this. You just can't put your king there. Rook to g8 just to attack this bishop, but things seem not great for black. They have no development in comparison to white's lots of development. Not really. They would need to be up multiple pawns to make that worth it, not just one. Now after castles, this is exceptional discipline by our Gambit Chad. It is very, very easy to play the super obvious move after castles, begging you to play bishop takes h6. Takes and queen takes h6. Now we're just going to go bishop d3, knight g5, and checkmate on h7, right? Wrong. If we had made this mistake, black is able to play knight g4, and it's something they're not able to do in this other situation with our bishop on d3. We would just checkmate them right away. But now after knight g4, we need to pull our queen back somewhere. Black's next move is f5, and their queen can come over for defense, right? So knight g4 would allow f5, and that's why it's very, very important that we have that knight totally pinned down with all of this, the f file just completely blocked off. Black cannot get their queen over in the other lines. Here they can. So we cannot play bishop takes h6 just yet, but instead the very, very nice move of Mr. Hall, bishop d3. Bishop d3 now threatening bishop takes h6. The obvious question, what if black captures on g5? Then we play knight takes g5. And so this is the piece sack we're looking for. With this diagonal open, we're looking at that h7 square. We also, of course, want to play, if black does nothing, we would play rook takes f6, knock him out, queen h7, right? So black here should probably play knight bd7 to fortify that knight, but we just keep coming after it. Knight to e4. Any knight move, we just want to play queen to h7 checkmate. And so here what we want to do is a double capture, classic one, and land queen to h7. So here, what black should play is rook to e8. Again, we have to be careful. If we now just go for it, rook to e8 opens up, and queen takes f6 opens up a couple squares for the king to escape. We can't let that happen. Instead, what we can do is realize how completely and utterly stuck black is and just play rook to f3. Rook to f3, next coming rook to h3 and queen to h8, and black has nothing. The knight can't move because of check and mate. The king does not have that square, and again, everything is blocked off. This queen cannot get over. These pieces are just out of the game. Rook to f3, rook h3, queen h8. I can think of one way to stop it, which is g6, to be able to play knight to h5, blocking this file. But g6, it's just like whack-a-mole. Something, you solve one problem and another one keeps coming up. We now put our last piece into the game. Rook f1, overwhelming pressure there. This pawn now cannot defend the knight on f6. We are going to take that knight with now 3 guys attacking it. Knight takes e4, rook takes f7 would knock him out, but then we also have just check and mate. So black cannot survive this way. If they started with rook e8, it would probably just transpose with knight c to e4, and again threatening now to take and check and mate. That they probably should play knight bd7 in this position anyway. So pawn takes g5 for that reason loses. For that reason, black tries to play knight bd7 to try to keep a knight on f6. But now bishop takes h6 is working. Very, very nicely done. They were able to get in knight bd7, but we got in bishop d3. That is an excellent trade for us. This knight is stuck, and this queen cannot get over, cannot get across this way. Rook to e8 is a good attempt to try to sneak that queen in through g7. Black will not be in time. Knight to g5, and here there will be checkmate incoming. Knight to f8 would defend h7, but would also drop this knight. So black here plays queen to f8, trying to hang on. Bishop h7, king h8. At least it's better than when black put a bishop here in the other game, where there was knight takes f7 checkmate. Here there is no such opportunity. However, there is a very similar opportunity. This is the sequence that was necessary to knock him out. Takes f7, queen takes, and bishop to g6 check. Just winning the queen. That's good enough. King to g8. Engine says that's a terrible blunder because they at least could have gotten something a little bit better for the queen. Here, of course, they are still very losing with all these pieces just pouring in, and black, really playing -8 points the whole game. King to g8 was played. Takes f7, king takes f7, knight e4. That's perfectly fine, although the engine said check, and just using all the pieces was somehow even more effective, with really just crashing through here. But in the game, we had knight e4. This also worked. Bishop e7. Very logical move with the bishop under attack and this knight on f6 under attack. And the game, knight to g5 check with the queen and knight. There will be checkmate coming here. King to f8 was queen to f7 mate, and king to h8 was knight to f7 checkmate. So a really, really nice game, and I'd love to highlight, especially, this is important, like it's fun to just send everything, sacrifice, yeah, it'll all work. We need to be careful. We need to watch for our opponent's defensive resources, as our Gambit Chad here did a great job of doing. Knight to g4 was possible in this position, which allows f5 and the queen shifting over. We cannot allow that. Bishop d3, excellent discipline, realizing knight takes g5 is still winning. So knight d7, and now bishop takes h6 is working with all the pieces pouring in for white and none of the pieces pouring in for black. So a great, great game here by Mr. Hall Mora Horror. Thank you so much for submitting, and great job in the British Championships. Let's see a couple other games with some similar quick knockouts. Here we have knight to f6 in the Von Popiel. So our opponent not playing d5 and allowing the immediate gambit, but knight to f6, and we can play this like a Jobava and e4. So pawn takes would be a direct transposition to what we wanted. Here our opponent played knight, our opponent played knight takes e4, and this is a very high-rated opponent. So let's see what to do. Oops, I'm so sorry. That's the view we wanted. Pretend that that's what we had the whole time. Okay, so what I was saying here was our opponent played knight to f6, knight to c3, and d5. So e4 here, this would be a direct transposition to our Von Popiel gambit, so we can kind of force that to happen. Here, our opponent played knight takes e4. So knight takes e4 happened. So we trade, and it's a little bit different. So we play your bishop e3, opponent plays knight d7, f3, take, but our opponent now shifts this knight over to f6, so this is looking very similar. That you'll note the knight on f6 is very, very important to black's defense over here. So they still got a knight over to f6. It's a little bit different because there's no pawn takes e4 and bishop to g5. They played it with knight takes e4. But similar ideas. Play bishop to c4, and what we got is black to play e6, which is exactly what we wanted. We didn't let this bishop get out. So here, bishop to g4 would have fallen victim to some very, very nice tricks of threatening mate at the expense of our queen. So black here plays e6. That's exactly what we want. We are going to be dropping our bishop back to d3. This is the setup that we love to see. Here comes the queen to h4. Here comes the pressure on h7. Let's see what to do against a very strong opponent. This is opponent's 2248. So b6, queen comes to h4, bishop to b7. And now here comes bishop to g5. However, you'll note the bishop was dead in every line before. Now black got the time to play bishop to b7 because we had to play this with bishop e3 and bishop to g5. So it was kind of like a little bit annoying. But bishop e3 was, of course, necessary to be able to play f3 in this line. But black was able to sneak that bishop into b7. And this is going to be very important. So here with h6, they, test us. Obviously, we're trying to take the knight and take here on h7. Black does not want to play g6. So they play here h6, takes, and queen takes. So they go for this anyway, but they have a different resource. They actually do have a knight move in this position. It's knight e4, and it's thanks to the bishop on b7 that knight e4 becomes possible. Now this is a little tricky, right? Knight coming to e4 means that potentially these pieces can swing over and you would just be down a piece if your attack does not work. That's not good. So here, what we need to do is bring more pieces into the game, and a very good move, rook a to e1. I like it. Rook e1 brings a piece that was ordinarily dead to now attacking this knight that is now overwhelmed because it can't move because of the queen h7 problem. I'll note, instead of knight e4, black also had another good resource with this bishop, which was this move queen to d5, which is a very tricky move, but the point is that we don't have knight g5 because we're going to get checkmated, and otherwise this queen can try to shift over to try and force some queen trades and really defend their king. So queen to d5 also could have been a good defensive resource here. In the game, black played knight e4, rook a to e1, and here black makes a mistake. Black actually needs to play this move f5, holding this knight here, even at the expense of allowing an obvious perpetual check or allowing this pawn to fall. But yes, white here clearly has that minimum a draw because of this obvious perpetual check, but the knight on e4 can really hold their position together. It cannot hold bishop g5. Bishop g5 looks like it could work because knight takes g5, queen takes g5. Now, all of a sudden, that queen trade is being proposed, and knight takes g5 would land black a piece up in the endgame. Instead, after bishop to g5, white here plays a very nice move, just sliding back queen to h5. And now here's the problem for black. The knight defends the bishop, and it's important, but the knight itself is attacked. If you designate a piece as a defender, make sure it's stable. This piece is not stable. This knight on e4 cannot stay there, and so here, black is losing. Black here plays f5 to try to hold the knight. We immediately just grab that knight on e4, takes e4, and very, very nice intermezzo, actually, before knight takes g5, which would have allowed here maybe queen takes d4, and the queen can get back. But here, nice intermezzo, throwing in this queen g6 check, king to h8, now knight takes g5. Now we have immediate checkmate threats on the table. And the issue for black is that if they just defend kind of normally on h7, the rook's going to swing into h4 and knock them out. So in this position, after queen g6 takes, black tries to play queen takes d4 check, king h1 and queen g7, which is a nice way to defend, try and get right in front of that queen, force a queen trade. However, unfortunately for black, white here can force a win in the endgame. Trade, knight takes e6, check with the fork, king g8, take, and again, I really like the technical stage here. Simply, rook takes e4. Get in a king and pawn ending where you are up a pawn, it is an automatic win. So nice idea here, up an exchange and a pawn. You can just trade that all off, rook takes e4, because it forces the rooks off the board. Here, this is just simply a win, because we're up a pawn. In fact, even if we didn't have this g-pawn, we could win the game just by virtue of an outside pass pawn, and then going over here to eliminate these guys. But even simpler for white is actually just to hold these guys together. Of course, king takes g4 allows this to run. Black can't do anything, and so that pawn is toast. And so here black resigns as white gets their king in first, which is a nice way to do it. These pawns, it's kind of nice to actually, in general, in king pawn endings, to keep your passed pawns in reserve, because then you can push them at any moment, and if your opponent wants to eliminate them, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time to do that. So nice move, rook takes e4 here, just to eliminate any doubt about the outcome of this game. But so here, black was able to get their bishop to b7, which could allow potentially some defensive resource. You saw that they had some opportunities to draw the game, or even with queen d5, more ambitious here, trying to freeze this knight where it stands, threatening checkmate. So an interesting game there against a very, very high-rate opponent who had that idea to play bishop b7 and a4, and bishop to g5. You see how these pieces can pour in after bishop to g5. Sorry, wrong bishop to g5. I just clicked on this bishop to g5. That black here now, what they want to do is play f5. They want to play queen f6. Now they have some pieces over there. They can defend it, but they didn't have enough time. That bishop on g5 got eaten. So nice game there. Let's look at another one here. Similar ideas. Takes. And I'm really, really excited to share with you some very, very new ideas that are going to be coming in the next couple of games. Let's look at this one quick. This was a very nice miniature. I had actually touched on this position before. Black here played g6 in this line to cut off this. So, of course, what we do, we pile on this diagonal, we pile on the knight there, which is very vulnerable. Black was sensing that and was sensing knight e5 and all of the pressure on this knight. Tried to play knight d5 to temporarily defend the bishop. It doesn't work. We can play knight takes d5 if they recapture. Bishop takes e7. So black here needed to play bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, and now threatening checkmate, so they cannot grab this back. Here black played h5, and so instead white just goes up a piece. But that wasn't even it. Here, white being completely winning by being able to do that knight takes d5, and then here knight takes g5 with the intermezzo mate threat, knight f4. Now, you can tell there's sacrifices galore on this, which it means completely unnecessary. You can win the game anyways, but knight takes g6, very nice. Also, queen is defending against this sometimes annoying check. Knight takes g6, just collapsing black's entire king side. Bishop takes g6. This pawn is going to fall, after which black's king is going to fall. So we'll see here king g7, maybe trying some ideas of rook to h8. We can take that anyway, because the point is that after rook h8, which looks like, okay, wait, now maybe are we going to lose something? No, we do another sacrifice. Knight takes e6 check, forking the king and queen. They need to take it. Queen to g5 check. If king to f8, rook takes f6, and black loses. So black plays king to h7 and instead loses even faster. Queen g6. Really, really nice series of sacrifices there. A really, really cool flurry. Everything's working. I love when we have f3, we open that diagonal, we open this file. This file, the rook is so important in so many of these attacks. Here's a nice game submitted by Blunder Villager, just captioned, I love chess, when he submitted on this one. It comes out of a Von Popiel Gambit. Again, black blocking in that light square bishop, so that after f3, okay, we don't have queen takes f3 with the fun double attack on f5, b7. Those are some other lines. Instead, we play knight takes f3. We get this stuff. We know what we're doing. Queen shifts e1, c5. This is a little bit of a better idea. Sometimes it's kind of annoying that they're trying to play c takes d4. There's maybe some issues going on here. For now, we can ignore it, because after queen to h4, still, black should probably be playing c takes d4, but we actually have another nice resource in this position, and it is the fact that we can play bishop takes h7. So just because of the pin here, that if they play king h8, obviously this was a rousing success. We can take it and start really looking at some checkmate ideas right there. So if they play knight takes h7, we can just take advantage of the fact we have this pin, bishop takes e7, and we are picking up some material with this fork. So we have lots and lots of ideas at play when we shift that queen to h4. Really strong idea. That's another key point of the f-pawn being gone, is that it allows the queen to get to h4, which is obviously a square that the standard defensive knight can't touch. Like queen h5 is obviously a very nice thing to do, but the queen's typically there. So in the game here, they play h6, we take it, queen takes h6, the c4 is played, which is a nice idea because, okay, you're trying to distract the bishop from over here, then you're trying to distract me. Now you can play knight g4, I don't have checkmate, and you can play f5, you can get these guys over, you can play here bishop f6, queen comes there, okay, you're surviving. Even this, like black survive, like the fact that black's able to get pieces in that direction means that they can maybe hang on. c4, so we cannot get distracted. Stay focused on the mission, boys. Knight g5. Knight g5, allowing c takes d3. So, of course, we're threatening bishop to h7, the same nice little checkmating idea. They play c takes d3, but everything for it. Knight c to e4. So, again, this knight is stuck. When that knight is stuck, black cannot get their pieces over. This is the brick wall formed against their queen potentially getting over here. The knight is stuck because of queen h7. And we're threatening, well, you'll see what we're threatening. Queen b6. Black is trying to do something to try and play queen takes d4, check. If you don't know what to do, by the way, in some prior calmer positions, king to h1 is always kind of a useful move because kind of this diagonal becomes annoying, especially at higher levels when people defend this differently. But so queen to b6, we play knight takes, and rook takes f6. We've sacrificed almost everything that we have here, but we're just trying to play queen to h7 mate, and it will come. Queen takes d4, king to h1, and opponent resigns. Queen takes f6 does not stop queen to h7 mate. Rook over also is not stopping queen to h7, and queen takes f7 checkmate, so there's actually nothing they can do. I thought this was a really nice game here, just allowing that pawn to come take this bishop, because instead we brought all these pieces into the attack. So we've seen a lot of these attacks, and hopefully you're getting a really, really good sense of how they work. So now, let's see something different. Let's see something a little bit different. So we've seen this line many, many times. Shout out to Say My Thanks, username Thanks on Discord. What a great username. It's his very first Von Hennig Gambit. Very, very first game with the Von Hennig Gambit goes like this. What a great introduction to this line. This could be your first game with the Von Hennig Gambit. Let's see how this goes. d4, d5, knight c3 takes e4, and we immediately shock all Caro Kann players who are obviously expecting knight takes e4 and are probably booked up there, yada, yada, yada. Instead, boom, bishop c4. Engine hates it. It's an inaccuracy. No, it's not. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to put pressure down this diagonal, and as you see in certain lines, we can put pressure down this diagonal. So what's the point of coming to c4? We've seen bishop c4 a few times. Why don't we just play f3 directly? The reason is because it becomes very easy for black to put their bishop on f5, and then the best we can do is really just trade off for that, and without that light square bishop causing the problems on h7, we don't really have any of this nice attack against a standard castle king. So how does bishop c4 stop bishop f5? I'm going to talk about that here. So because this is a good opportunity to talk about both bishop f5 and bishop to g4. So bishop to g4 was played in this game, after which we uncorked the very, very nasty move, knight to e5. In your very first Von Hennig game, how cool is that you got knight to e5? Just so cool. So we're attacking the bishop here. If they take our queen, we take their king. Checkmate. And it's more than just a trick. It's way more than just a trick. If they play pawn to e6, we just take that bishop, and now we're up a bishop. If they play bishop to h5, we can just take it, sacrifice our queen again. Oh no, my queen. One more time. We are now still threatening checkmate. So to have knight e5 is very, very cool. Bishop to f5 is the best move. And I get this all the time. But what we do, and you can find this in my other Von Hennig Gambit videos, which I'll link below. But e6, now they play, right? We play here knight g5. Now we've got a lot of tricks coming. What we want to do, if bishop d7 or h6, what will happen is we'll take it and take the bishop. So the bishop needed to be on f5, but is still not safe on f5 because we're threatening rook takes f5 and knight takes f7. So it comes to g6, right? Out of the way of this and still shielding this diagonal. But suddenly, bishop is not protecting e6, and so we keep striking. We play bishop takes e6, takes knight takes e6, just some really, really fun lines. Bishop to g5, leaving this nasty knight in the middle of their position, because, well, so the point of bishop to g5 is that if they take this, we can take their knight, so that nobody blocks us from, nobody has knight e4 in this position, so we can pick up their queen if they want to take our knight. So bishop to g5 indirectly defends this knight on e6 that just like completely wrecks their position. They can't take it because we'll eliminate that knight and play rook to e1, winning their queen. So instead the knight on e6 is going to stop castling in both directions and put a ton of pressure on g7. Really, really fun stuff in the Von Hennig Gambit. I play this at all levels with really, really high success. Because literally that position, black has to go into it. Black really has no choice. Like, that is the Stockfish recommendation. In this position, black plays bishop to g4 and instead falls for, it's really pick your poison. It's really just a pick your poison kind of situation. This is one of the worst poisons to pick because knight e5 is really such a nice move. Bishop to e6 was played, which is the only way for black not to lose a piece. But after takes, this is a disaster that happens to their pawn structure. Castles knight bd7. In the game here, bishop to g5 was played by our friend Say My Thanks. What I like to do in this position is I actually like play knight f3. I don't want to make that trade at all. And what I want to do is put my knight on g5 and really just win that e6 pawn. So for example, g6, like black is, I don't know, try to get out some way. Now if you're knight g5, black is in a ton of trouble because how do you defend that pawn? And if bishop to g7, you will lose that bishop due to this nasty fork. And white can put even more pressure on e6, but really they should just be winning that pawn, and the knight looks even better on e6 than it did on e5, if that's even possible. In the game, knight d7 and bishop g5 can't fault you for bringing out another piece, but here, a poor decision by black. h6. making their light squares very, very vulnerable, specifically this diagonal. As soon as you move your f-pawn, you gotta watch out for this diagonal, and you gotta be able to meet queen h5 with g6. In this game, takes f6, pawn takes f6 was played. If knight takes f6 would have gave the opportunity for an even better sacrifice on f6, but pawn takes f6 was played, which allowed here queen to h5 check. That's why we would have made sure there was no knight on f6. Queen to h5 check. Now there's nothing shielding this diagonal. King e7. We could have played the very tempting queen f7, and big shout out to Say My Thanks for not doing that, actually, because here, okay, like you have some checks, but like the king is running away a little bit. It's better to just win the rook. Knight to g6 check. Better choice than queen f7. Just winning the rook, so you'll win the game. Just win the game. Don't you know, I don't just be tempted by bait if there's nothing there, you know, like just win the rook. Just win the rook. So king c7, bringing in all of our pieces. Love that rook e1. Everybody joins in the fun. d5, what a great move, taking advantage of this pin, and we took advantage of this pin one more time as they took it. Knight takes d5 with the fork, with the pin. Thank you very much. What an excellent game. And there was a little bit more of that game. We saved that knight, and rook to d1, and our opponent resigns. Really, really nice game that showed what to do if our opponent tries to, like we've been seeing what's been happening with e6. We take this diagonal. Our opponent tries to get that light square bishop not boxed in by playing this move bishop to g4. I talked about bishop f5 and what to do there with castles and with the knight g5 resource. If our opponent plays this bishop to g4, we have this knight e5. It's not just like some random trick. It's actually really important. If we were to just castle and play e6 here, we would just really just be down a pawn. This bishop would really be able to shield their light squares. And so it's important that we have this, and that's why we play bishop c4, to put that pressure on f7, to oblige our opponent to try to play that move e6. So really, really nice stuff with the Von Hennig Gambit. Shout out to Say My Thanks for the first Von Hennig Gambit game. Okay, I saved this game for last. And after this, I'm excited to actually talk about some of Black's better defenses. You've noticed Black continues to castle into that. And that's probably what will happen in your games. That's really what happens almost every game. I'll talk about maybe some ideas Black has in defense other than that. So in this game, submitted by our favorite, one of our boys, Argumentative, shout out for submitting this game. Crazy game here. This was an over-the-board submission. So e4, d5. So we have an e4. We face this game. Oh, I'm not going to forget. I think I've done every game with the right scene. Okay, this is the right scene for this. Let me move that over a little bit. Okay, so you can see it. It's number 3. So e4, d5. If you like e4, and if you like, you know, playing against Von Hennig Gambits with c6, if you like playing your Goring Gambits with this, which is the improved version of the Danish, this stuff. If you like playing e4, you can still get some Von Popiel taste, because after d5, you play d4, like Argumentative did, and we have ourselves a Von Popiel incoming. Our opponent plays pawn takes e4, we play knight c3. So the point being that it could have started out of a queen's pawn, and now e4, and just a very simple transposition from Scandinavian d4. Simple transposition here. So it takes e4, knight c3, knight f6, bishop to g5, and we talked here about bishop to f5 previously a little bit. f3 here, queen takes f3, really nice resource discussed in my Von Popiel Gambit videos. Bishop f5 still being the most common move. Here, e6. We talked about knight bd7 in some of the prior games. Similar stuff. e6. Knight takes e4 would actually be a direct transposition to some French. So e4, e6 this would come out of. d4, d5. Knight c3. Takes. Knight to f6. And bishop to g5 is a move in this position. And so white here would have a slight advantage. And of course, knight takes e4 is going to be the engine's recommendation. However, yes, I believe in knight takes e4 nets white a slight advantage, but that's not the way of the Gambit Chad. Excellent comment written by Argumentative, who played here f3. So it takes, knight takes f3, bishop e7, bishop d3. We get to develop in one go, not even like the Von Hennig where we have to do this, and bishop to d3, which really isn't the end of the world, but always better to do in one go. Castles, c6, which is not even a good move, but it really transposes us to a Von Hennig now up a tempo. So castles, c6. Black is better off playing c5, really trying to strike and cause some sort of issue for us. c6, really not causing a huge issue. I understand it's a solid move. Maybe you want your queen out this way, but it really probably hurts this guy even more. Better was maybe b6 and putting the bishop there, in which case we saw in the other game that the bishop actually did quite a bit of damage down this diagonal and introduced some new resources for black, including like this knight e4 idea. So c6, queen to e1 was played, and with queen to h4 incoming, and you might say, okay, I've seen this a million times. Yeah, black plays knight d7, we play queen h4, we're going to overwhelm this knight, they're going to play g6 or h6, and we're going to knock them out quickly. Black here played a little bit better of a move. Black played h6, which makes this position very interesting. Because, so what would you do here? What would you do? You have a few options, right? So you could come back, but then it's like, wait, that wasn't what I wanted. Now, okay, maybe I have some other options for attack, but like this wasn't what I wanted. We can come back this way, but that's also kind of not what we wanted. We wanted queen h4 first, and then for h6 we wanted to be able to take it twice, right? And we don't want to trade here. We want like our nice little pretty queen e1, queen h4, and attack down those both diagonals. So h6 kind of messes that up. Our opponent sees what's coming, they play h6. Instead, we have a very, very interesting move in this position. I would recommend here, I believe that it's still winning, to play this move queen to h4. So when we play this move queen to h4, this was not played in the game, but we're threatening bishop takes h6. If pawn takes g5, now we play knight takes g5. Now we're threatening to play rook takes f6 and queen to h7 checkmate, right? So black here really only has one resource, which is this move knight bd7, and we talked about this in this position with the queen on e7. Something we can do here is now a really, really tricky line. No fault to argumentative for missing this. But we have here bishop to h7 check. So obviously we have this resource where we can just go back check and check, 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 right? But we're trying to land a queen on h7. And so our opponent playing knight d7 now reinforces that. Something we can do here is take advantage of the fact that our opponent is having a hard time getting pieces over. Play this move knight ce4. Absolutely filthy way to end the game, but it does indeed end the game. Knight is frozen because of queen to h7 checkmate. What we want to do is take it and take it. In fact, even if they take this bishop, we take it and take it. And here black loses because queen to h7 is coming. And if rook takes f6, we still play queen to h7 and queen to h8 because their bishop is there. And if bishop takes f6, then they didn't clear that square. So they can't clear both f8 and e7 at the same time. So here was a really, really nice way to get him with queen to h4. And I believe, so the point is, if you play knight ce4 now, potentially black will have this resource g6 to hang around, and then knight to h5. So it's actually, or g6 is not even working. I don't know why knight ce4 wouldn't knock him out, but I just, potentially rook e8 here. Potentially rook e8, and that wasn't really a resource that black had in this position, right? Of trying to play knight takes and takes, right? Because if pawn takes isn't working, we can just hang out here. And rook e8 is, of course, not an option in this position when we can take f7. So rook e8, trying to create another square here, is not working. So we can play here queen to h4. If there's no pawn takes g5, right? If this will just end the game because of checkmate threats down this line, and also you know like this, like there's worse ideas than doing this. Queen always defending d4 is a great feature of this line as well. Queen does so much here, from defending d4 to this diagonal to obviously that file. So much is done there. But knight takes g5 here should win the game for white. So queen to h4, if it's playable, should set up bishop takes h6 very well. But very, very difficult to know that in advance. And instead what we saw was bishop takes h6 played in the game anyway. So just sacrificing there and just coming out queen to g3 check, king to h8, and knight to e5. Okay, what to make of this position? What to make of this position? So it is not a ridiculous piece sacrifice. It is not ridiculous at all, because black is playing, like, you think you're down a piece, but black is down all of these pieces. And what's white going to do? Well, really just attack right there. So like for example, this rook could just swing right to h4, just rook takes h6 could end the game. Or queen to h4, threatening that, right? Queen to h4, king to g7, and then the rook can come right to g3. Basically, we've got these two files, we've got two pieces, we're going to put them there. And it is difficult to recommend some defensive resources for black. Argumentative gives in his notes this move queen takes d4 check, king to h1, and knight bd7, which was not played in the game but looks logical. And like, you know, take a pawn with check, why not? Knight d7 now threatens to dislodge an important attacking piece. Queen to h3 was given here, and so it's this very, very interesting line. So h5 was given here, takes, and so now we've, by eliminating that knight and then eliminating this knight, he is absolutely right. We have now gotten all of the knights off the board. so that we can take h5 and h7 and use both of those squares. Queen to g4 is given here, queen to e3, a really, really nice move. Takes queen to h6 and slipping in there for mate. Basically, yes, if you can eliminate that knight and that knight, then you're probably going to be checkmating. So h5 is not working for that reason. Very good. Knight takes e5, also not working because of takes, and rook takes f6. The knight now has left the post on d7 that it needed to hold against queen to h7. And knight takes d3, also not playable, even though that stops this mate. It does not stop a different mate, which is that dropping back queen to g5 and rook to h6 over. Really, really nice ideas here all around. Black here has one good idea. It's very, very difficult to see. It is with this move, queen takes e5. So in this position, knight bd7, queen to h3, right? So we talked about this position. Queen takes e5, allowing takes h6, king g8, rook f3. It looks like white will win immediately. In fact, this was in the notes by Argumentative that we're going to play rook to g3 check. However, so if black plays rook e8, so something like bishop f8, bishop to g7, something, that's going to come. So, okay, we have to give this check right away. Black can take it, and now maybe try to play bishop f8, bishop g7. So the point is we've actually sacrificed so much material that black here has a rook, a knight, and a bishop for the queen, which is a large haul. However, this position's quite interesting, even still. So maybe we try to play g5, g6, because their king is a little unsafe. I mean, this is a tough resource to find. Black need to find a lot of very precise defensive resources. But if they can get that bishop to g7, now they're defending a lot of squares around their king. But the fight would go on here in a very interesting manner. If black is able to consolidate, they would be up some stuff. But white still is going for the attack and might knock him out before these pieces even get into the game. So that was the best way for black to play in this. Just the fact that you're up so much material, so you're able to play to grab that knight and then to grab this rook, right? And there was a piece sacrifice before this. So that is your best defensive resource here if you're black. Take that, take that. You can sacrifice the queen, and now white doesn't have enough attackers to knock you out immediately, and the bishop is able to get to g7 in time. I'll note the bishop on g7 makes an excellent defender when white is without their dark square bishop to eliminate that. Even if this knight were to go away, and like here black can replace it, but like even if not, this bishop can still guard a lot of key squares around the king and hold it like that. So this idea of rook e8, bishop f8, bishop to g7, in these lines, black has not been able to pull it off, but here black's able to pull it off while giving up the queen. Queen takes d4 was not played for this reason, because of these very, very difficult lines with queen to h3 and difficulty defending h6. Instead, black played this move, knight bd7, very reasonable. White here plays queen to h3, argumentative, still attacking h6, and here black plays h5 to defend this. If black played king g7, then this rook is going to shift to g3, check, which would force king h8 and queen takes h6. So black here plays h5, rook comes to f4 instead, and now this rook is going to shift to f1, this rook is going to shift to h4. We're going to just really, like, if black cannot find something to do, and it's hard to find something to do, we're just going to come here, we're just going to take this, and we're just going to checkmate just like that, right? So rook coming to f4. Basically, I mean, it's kind of like it's strange that we can sacrifice a piece and still kind of play this slowly, really. Like with rook f4, like we're a couple moves away from making a threat, but really black's pieces are just so bad, and it's just so hard for them to get over that black is just not able to consolidate against the threats, even if, even given a little bit of time. Even given, like, it's not a ton of time. If black had a ton of time, then they play c5, they play b6, they play bishop here. They would do all these things, but they don't have a ton of time. So h5, we're able to give them a little bit of time just because of how bad their position is. And so the bishop takes h6 wasn't the stockfish choice, but it was a really, really good practical choice because black needed to find a lot of precise defenses. That did not happen. In the game here, black takes e5, tried to eliminate that dangerous knight, but this knight is now attacked and was the designated defender of the h5 pawn. That's a huge problem. That would get them checkmated right away. So in the game here, black plays rook to g8, trying to shift over, trying to hold some things together, takes f6. So now at least they're able to try to run away. That's why they played this move rook to g8, so that in this position after queen to h7 check, they're able to play king to f8. So black here, still able to hang on, even though we've won our piece back. What do? We keep bringing all of our pieces into the game. Keep bringing all your pieces into the game. Very, very good. Now white is winning. They're going to try to take f6, and of course f7 behind that. Lots and lots of target. Black was not able to hold this together. Check. Simply slide their king out of the way. f5. no, it's not super obvious because white doesn't appear to have a check. And, you know, if you give black a couple moves, okay, queen f6, bishop to d7, maybe they can start to consolidate this position a little bit. And instead, just an absolutely nasty, nasty move out of nowhere to end the game in an over-the-board game by argumentative, queen to g4 check. Queen to g4 check. If black slides the king out of the way and doesn't take then there's rook takes d4, winning material. Because the queen is under attack, they can take this way. You can't take with a pawn because of the pin. Takes, and we have won a bishop at minimum. So queen to g4 check. Okay, I touched on the king moves. What if they play pawn takes g4? Rook to f7 check. If king here, they are checkmated. To get this in an actual game where everything works is crazy. King to h6 check. King to g5 check. We're losing all of our pieces. This rook cuts him this way. The bishop is working. This rook is working. The knight now jumps into the game. So king to g6 is a move. Only one because the bishop is blocked there. Knight to d6. Super precise. Discovered check. This rook is protected and is taking away these squares. This rook is taking away that square. There are no blocks in this position. King has to come back to g5. And now the knight hits g5, but not from e4 where it blocked the bishop, but instead on f7, which in addition to being a fork is checkmate. Totally forced. Amazing, amazing combo. What a combo to end on right there by argumentative. Queen to g4 check with a flurry to finish them off. Super, super nice stuff. I'll talk about a couple lines in the Von Popeil now, where, so for example, something like this, where black doesn't castle. So we have something like this, let's say, where maybe black played here, let's say b6, and bishop to b7. So like black's not going to castle and give us this queen h4 attack, which we talked about. So what to do in a situation like that, right? There's a couple things. First is that I believe in a position like, so first of all, yes. So in a position like this, what I would do is I would play this with just queen to g3 anyway. Because very often with queen to g3, you're able to take away queen to c7, and so any way that they can get their pieces out at all, right? So, and similarly, if this comes out of the von Hennig, it's actually, I think, more effective shown this way. Very similar stuff. So like e6, here, something like this. Knight bd7, right? So I like it with little bit of delay of bishop to g5. So yes, with queen to g3, we can attack g7, and so we can really oblige them to castle in this line. And so, yes, because just simply due to the pressure here. And so, for example, if g6, now we can play this with bishop to h6 to really just stop them from castling. They can proceed here with some ideas of maybe escaping this way. So b6, rook to e1, bishop to b7, and like let's say we had dropped back this way and they played something like c5, right? So here were some of the ideas I wanted to show. So we got all of our pieces into the game. We dropped back bishop to d3. This could have come out from a couple of different situations, but here we have a really, really nice tactic, and it's this move rook takes e6, which is just absolutely filthy. If they take it back, we have like queen takes g6, which is unnecessary. We could have played bishop takes, but this is checkmate. So this could actually really happen in one of your games if your opponent here plays g6, really, really trying to delay castling. Otherwise, if they castle, then okay. I mean, in addition to the other resources, you have here bishop to h6. And the other thing I want to touch on, so in this line, so coming out of the Von Popeil, yes. So in this position, yes. So even better than queen to e1 in specifically this position. So it comes out of the Von Popeil, right? So here, knight bd7 is played, f3, takes, e6, bishop d3, here, and so here black's trying to play b6, trying to castle queenside, right? Maybe they realize the danger of queen e1, queen h4, so they play your b6. A move I like a lot, even better than queen e1, is this move knight e5, which is very, very useful, even if they go this way. So knight to e5, very, very strong resource. Black here plays bishop to b7, and now we play here bishop to b5. And this can be very strong for like a number of reasons, but this pin is very, very annoying. And something we're threatening to do is play bishop takes d7 and then knight takes over there. For example, like a6, we can take this and then make that knight move and then take on f7. So nice use of the knight there to stop queen takes d7 and then to still threaten this. But basically with bishop to b5, it's a ton of pressure coming down in that direction. So some very, very strong stuff. So knight e5 is another nice little trick there. But also, even if you get your queen to g3, it can really take away any spot that queen has to get out of the center. Okay, guys. Thanks so much. Submit your games to Weekly Gambit Genius. You guys can find the full Gambit repertoire and find all these awesome gambits that you can play. Crazy, crazy stuff. Attacking stuff. This is brand new. Your opponents don't know it because I made this stuff up. I researched this and I find this and I really love to do that. But yeah, so you guys can do that. Submit your games. Join our awesome Discord where people share their games and talk about opening ideas. You get notified every time I go live on Twitch and post new YouTube videos. And thanks so much. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Take care.